Hot Springs Village Inside Out is a closer look at the greatness of Hot Springs Village, Arkansas and the surrounding areas. People, places, experiences. Hot Springs Village, Arkansas is one of the most beautiful places on the earth. Join me, Randy Cantrell, and my co-host Dennis Simpson as we engage in weekly conversations to explore Hot Springs Village Inside Out. Today's show is brought to you by Central Arkansas's favorite radio station, KVRE. Find them on the dial at 92.9 FM. Stream them live at kvre.com. We're joined today by Barton Langford. Bart has a degree in forestry. He's got 50 years plus experience in trees. He is semi-retired and he is a resident tree expert living inside Hot Springs Village. We welcome Bart to the show.
This meeting is being recorded.
It sure is. Hey.
I hadn't heard that before.
I haven't either. Was that on Bart's end?
Yeah, it's on Bart's end.
Oh, really?
It's on Bart's end.
Okay.
Well, it lets you know that we're recording, but
well,
I haven't heard it come through the speakers like that before.
Yeah, I've never heard that before.
I'm going to leave that in. Of course we're recording.
Of course we're recording. Yeah, who knew?
Otherwise
everybody knows we're recording. This is not live. We're with Bart Langford today, who you've already know about. Man, where to start with Bart? I tell you what, Bart.
Well, do they know about him? I just now know about him.
Well,
so
I wouldn't have known about him. You know,
you're assuming everybody knows about him. That's the whole reason for having him on here.
I thought you would have done that in the pre-roll, Randy. I thought you were doing that in the pre-roll.
Well, I don't know. I mean,
depends.
Too much to put in a pre-roll.
That's for sure. I met Bart at the Forestry and Common Properties Committee when we were meeting with Todd Knowles. And I was thoroughly impressed. Now, as a guy who owns a couple of acres in the village, I was thinking, now, maybe I've got property that we would look at. And I asked Bart to go around and look at some properties that Jeff and I have and that Diane and I have. And I was just telling Randy seconds ago, literally, that was the most interesting walk I've ever had in the woods in my life because I saw the woods in a different way. Bart, have you looked at woods for a couple of years?
Just a few.
Just a couple?
This year will be 50. This is my 50th year after getting educated to look at them. I lived in the woods all my life, which is 70 plus years. But as far as looking at them with that eye that you're talking about, you learn that. Part of forestry is science. Part of forestry is not science. It's a feel or feeling. There are things you look at in one situation, you would cut this tree, and if he's in another situation, you would not. So some of it is an art.
So let me get this straight. You've seen millions of trees and no two alike so far.
Oh, yes, that's correct.
Well,
no matter if they look alike to most people. They do look alike to most people. Now, I understand that, but they aren't.
Well, I have a million questions for you, and I really want to share with our audience, impart some of your knowledge if we can, as best I can help translate it. So for the average homeowner in the village, and by the way, you do live in the village. We'll get to your story here in a minute. I want to hear the rest of that story. But for the average homeowner that has a home lot in the village, it's a third acre, half acre, maybe 3/4 of an acre at the largest. What do they need to know about their trees? What's the number one thing that they need to know?
The number one concern I would put it is the health of the tree.
Well,
whether it's in danger, and perhaps it's in danger of falling on their house or their fence or whatever, but whether the tree is actually in danger, whether it's a healthy tree or not. That would be my number one concern.
I told, and I mentioned earlier, this was the best conversation I'd ever had walking through a forest before. I realized, and it sounds as naive as it can be, but I realized we were walking through a thicket of pine trees, and way up in the tops were really thin. And you said, those trees are starving out. They're going to die. And I'm like, well, right. But they're tall, thin trees. They look like they're doing great. They're growing wonderful. Tell the audience what you told me, if you would.
Well, a healthy tree, a quote unquote healthy tree, will have approximately 1/3 of it, 30%. Of the length in crown or leaves or needles, being a pine tree. And most of the trees we were looking at had 10 to 15% of the length in crown. And you have to realize that that's where they make their food. So that's one of the reasons they start growing slower as they get older. They don't have as much food. If you don't have enough food to eat, you will grow a little slower. Now,
that may be my deal. Maybe I need less food and I don't need to grow as fast.
That's what I'm trying to do myself. But that's the key. That's the key to it. And you do have to realize, hardwood trees, they only have food and produce food a shorter time than pines. Pines don't produce much food in the winter, but maybe a little, because they do have their leaves or needles. That's a pine tree's leaves or needle. They're called needles. They have them all year long. Now, hardwood trees don't. People love the beauty of hardwood trees, and I have a beautiful white oak about 30 feet from where I'm sitting that I just love. But and he has about half of his length in crown. He's a healthy tree, 16 inches in diameter. I don't worry about that tree falling on my house or nothing like that.
Okay, well let's come back.
There are pines 40 feet on common property that I really need to get Todd over here and look at, that I worry about, because they have the lean that you were speaking of, and the roots are a little bit pulling out of the ground. We do have one thing in the village that people might like to know, that our shortleaf trees, shortleaf pine trees, is what we have for the most part. They do have a taproot, which makes them more stable and less prone to wind blowing them down. And it still happens, but the taproot has to be broken. A loblolly tree, for instance, that you find more in the southern part of the state, they have branching roots instead of a taproot. Now, do the branching roots, when that ground gets wet, is it easy to tip over or yes, it is.
Knock it over?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so, and I know this sounds stupid, but I'm being super remedial for me and everybody else. So it doesn't matter how much bark's on the tree, and it doesn't matter how tall the tree is. It only gets food, and it can only grow for the crown or the needles, or that's where all the oxygen, the food, everything comes from.
That's correct. The food comes out of the ground, goes up through the capillaries between the bark, goes up through it's called inner bark, between the actual wood and the bark, and it goes up there to the crown, and it takes the food out, and then in turn it grows, and that produces oxygen. So a lot of our trees aren't producing as much oxygen as a smaller tree would be producing. A younger tree would be a better way to put it, rather than smaller.
Right. But so they're starving out.
Yes. A tree is a living thing. All living things die.
Well, I was going to say, so how old, over in Cambrai, just north central of me, just a little over by Cortez, I've seen trees, and you talk about, so you said a 16-inch tree, 16 at the base, 16, 50 feet up. What does that mean?
16-inch, when you speak about diameters of trees, that they're measured at what was called diameter breast height, which is 4.5 feet from the normal ground line. You say normal ground line because we live on a mountain over here, but still the average ground line, you measure up 4.5 feet, and then you measure the diameter, not the circumference, but the diameter of the tree, and that's a 16-inch tree. Some of our trees here, over there, close to La Canada, where we met and walked on your track. Now, I met with an individual since then over there, a logger that has cut some trees on that property, by the way.
Oh, really? Before, huh?
Yes. So I'm working, but some of the trees over there, how old would you think they are?
Okay, it's funny you should say that, and I want to give the audience a background here. When you and I were walking this 7-acre property on the far west end, and it's been in the village as long as anything. It's probably a 50-acre. It was near the oldest lake in the village. Okay. And I'm looking at this property and going, okay, that's a 30-year-old tree. And we're looking at these stumps and going, is that a 10-year-old stump? Because we could see some things had been cut. And right over from us, there were trees basketball size. I'm not going to go diameter or whatever, but there were hardwoods that were basketball size. And I'm like, are those of any value? And what's that? And you were saying, well, if you've got in South Arkansas, if you've got lots of moisture, those hardwoods just explode. And I'm thinking, okay, do I have lots of moisture here? Do I not? I mean, I'm guessing the pines over there are 30, and I'm guessing the hardwoods are that way too. Maybe
double your pines and you'll get close.
60? Are you kidding?
Maybe 75 or 80. The large ones, the large pine trees.
And for the listener, that tree is 36 inches in
18 inches in
circumference.
diameter. Well, it's probably more like 50 inches in circumference.
Really?
This diameter is 3.1416.
Yeah. So it's basically mother-in-law size, is what I heard you say.
Yeah. No, I didn't say that. I don't have a mother-in-law. She passed away. See? But
not your mother-in-law. No. Just a general. Take your average mother-in-law. That's where they are.
The big trees in the village were here whenever the village was created, and they were pretty good size then.
Okay, well then, you're saying,
and the life expectancy of a tree like that, though. These trees that you're describing are 75 to 80 years old.
They can be 100. They can be 100, but what happens when they get so old, meaning 60 to 70, when they get to be the 18 inches that we're talking about, and the crown gets so small, they get weak, just like a human that gets weak.
Yeah.
And a blade of grass, of cotton stalk. I mean, anything. Y'all probably haven't, but people chopped cotton for 100, 200 years around in Arkansas and Texas and wherever. The reason they chopped down perfectly good cotton so the rest of the cotton could produce boughs.
Oh,
it's the same thing with trees.
Oh, well, now, so let's go back to and let's face it, it's the Segovia area. Mm-hmm. So those trees are like 75 years old. Well, some of the ones over here on Cambrai must be close to 100 because they're even a little bigger than that. Maybe they also just had better nutrients. They got better food, less competition, whatever.
Better nutrients,
but these trees that you're talking about that are so large, and they're monsters in my book. I mean, 80 feet tall, 90 feet tall.
Yes. 80.
Okay. So, I mean, and there's literally a ton of timber in there, I'm assuming, or more, right?
Several tons. Yes.
Really? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that tree alone, and we're looking, when you and I were there, there's stumps beside it that were relatively that size. So somebody came in, harvested that area, made less competition. So this big one we're looking at now is the beast it is today because somebody else cleared around it, right?
Yes. And a given acre will only grow so much volume. I don't care if you're growing trees or you're growing grass or you're growing tomatoes. It will only grow so much volume. Now you can have some shorter, fatter trees, or you can have some longer, taller trees. You can have a fewer big trees or a lot more smaller trees, but it's a given acre will only produce enough nutrients to grow so much volume. And that's it, period.
Randy, I don't know about you, but I'm getting an education. You getting smarter?
Yeah. And I want a real short tangent because I spent a large part of my life in southern Louisiana. So these enormous, huge oak trees.
Yes.
That you see on some of the plantations, that still exist down there. And they talk about these trees, some of these trees were around during the Civil War.
Right. Some of them are a few hundred years old.
Yeah. I mean, educate me a little bit about that. And I know we don't have those there, but
no,
we got a bunch of southern Louisiana folks in the village. I'm just curious.
We're talking to you, Gary Mouton.
So good. The soil is so great down there. We don't have the rocks. We have plenty of moisture. The soil is easier for a tree's roots to grow. Think about that. If you're a tree growing roots, you're growing through soil without the rocks and things that we have. It's much easier to grow. It's much easier to go out farther and find nutrients. I'll tell you a fact that is really difficult to believe. There is as much of a tree underground as it is above.
Really? Volume-wise?
I knew you wouldn't believe it. But yes, with roots, and that's how a tree feeds. Now, that's not, it's not inch for inch and pound for pound, but that's a rough statement that is actually true.
Wow.
And is that so of any kind of species of tree?
Yes, pretty much any kind. You think about that. That's why you see the sidewalks buckling, around parks.
Right.
And if you have trees too close to your drive, that's what happens. There's a root there, and there are many, many more roots that aren't near the surface.
Well, I think something telling is that when we see a tree that's tipped over here in the village, and you can see the root ball, it'll have chunks of chert or slate stuck inside that root ball because it's literally tried to grow around it. So your story about South Arkansas, Louisiana. But Randy, to follow up on your point, how old's that tree in Louisiana going to be? I mean, Civil War, come on. How much longer is it going to live?
Yeah, but you can see these trees, and I mean, they appear like they're flourishing just like they were, you know, I mean,
if they have a good crown, they can live a long time. Trees can certainly outlive us.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean they're healthy. Now, those trees down there it's a different environment, a lot different environment than we have here. Even in South Arkansas, it's quite a different environment. I mean, you see companies cut trees. You drive around outside the village up Highway 7 and you see all these places where they've mowed them down and replanted. They didn't do that for exercise. They did that because those trees they planted are spaced properly. They're usually a good species part, but they're spaced properly. The ground is prepared properly, and they're going to grow faster. So they're going to grow at 8%, 10% maybe for when they're younger. Now the trees they cut were probably growing at 1 or 2%. Now, which would you rather have your land producing, 8%, or land/money producing 8 or 2?
Well,
to me, that's an easy question.
And they'll harvest it. They'll roughly harvest a tree after how many years?
They will thin it because it will get too thick, and the competition will slow down the growth. At about 15 to 17 years, they'll thin it, take out about a third of the trees. That sounds like a lot, but in 5 to 7 more years, they will have just as much volume as they would have if they hadn't thinned it.
Yeah. What do they do with that first cut? Is that first cut pulpwood or what?
It's pulpwood, yes, and probably most of the second cut will be pulpwood. But you'll have larger trees worth more money if you cut some. I mean, that sounds odd, but it's true. They'll increase their growth percentage. If you bore a tree or take a hole, there's a steel borer they call it. You can screw it in the side of the tree and take out a little round like a pencil, but it shows all your growth rings. And if you did that on your property over there off of La Canada, you can probably see when they cut those trees. You can count the growth rings back, and you'll see an increased growth because the width between the growth rings will widen.
I'm sitting here with my mouth open. I'm learning so fast. So do I want?
I am not. And one thing I need to let you in, but I'm not a smart guy. I'm just old. I've just been doing this a long time.
Well, do I want daylight to hit the ground? Is that the best use of my daylight or not? If I'm growing a forest?
If when daylight hits the ground, you'll have different kinds of vines, different kinds of vegetation, even small pine trees. See, when pines, when the cones drop their little whirligig seeds in the fall, and they don't grow because they don't have enough sunshine, they're not dead. They're lying dormant, and once sun comes in, then they'll sprout. They'll go into the ground, send the little root into the ground, and start growing. Now, if you want a park-like setting, more shade is better. Park-like meaning no little underbrush, because underbrush will die without sunshine. And I like that myself. I love the village. I like how the village looks. We're talking about, in a way, you're talking about two different things. The village hopefully will combine both things. One is a commercial doing it because of the same reasoning that these companies have to do it. Okay, you want to just let's make the most growth we can and all this, and we have all these younger trees. Well, that's not necessarily a good thing in our village. But neither is sitting here and letting the trees die. We have, if you have a lot, you have to deal with individual trees on your property. Okay, if one gets sick, then you're better off to take it. I told my mother one time we cut a pretty large tree on her place, and she said, "Gosh, that was a big tree." And I said, "Yes, but it was a junky tree. We'd rather have a little bitty 2-inch tree growing in its place. This junky tree is always going to be junk." Now, but another thing that people don't realize, They move over here and they see these big trees. Do you know what? That biggest tree that you own was once a little bitty fella about an inch tall. Think about that.
Yeah. And literally in these instances, in our lifetime. Well, I mean, and I'm so naive in so much of this, and we're surrounded by it. We love our trees, and I find it interesting. I find it interesting that you're from South Arkansas and you know this area, but you love the village. I mean, there's a whole lot of places you could live in South Arkansas, my friend.
Oh yeah, and we have a place in South Arkansas, about 2 hours from here, a few hundred acres, and I go there and visit, but I live here.
Well, and okay, so I'm going to give our 5 mile high view real quick. Okay. Mm-hmm. South Arkansas, basically you could divide Arkansas up into thirds. Okay.
Sure.
From Little Rock to the west and north is the Ozarks, to the north and the east is the Crawley's Ridge, to the southeast is the Delta. And right. Kind of south of here is Delta-ish. It's not very hilly down there. And right. So there are billions of pine trees there, billions of pine trees, Amen. And they grow well. But that line, like Interstate 40, from here to Fort Smith, okay? Mm-hmm. As soon as I go up Highway 7, traveling up Highway 7, beautiful scenic drive, love it, going through the National Forest. I get the other side of 40, and there are cedar trees everywhere. I know because my eyes start pouring and my nose starts running, okay? But here, there's a few cedars, and they look like volunteers. But
right, they are.
Why? So there's pines in South Arkansas. There's very mixed here, and then there's a lot of cedar and oaks in the northwest. Is that just ground type? What is that?
Most of it is the the Ouachita Mountains and the Ozark Mountains are different mountains. They were formed differently, so they have a lot more rocks in the Ozarks. Even though it looks like we have a lot of rocks in our Ouachitas, we still have a lot of dirt, a lot of soil. And the Ozarks don't have that much soil. They're heavier to rocks. So they don't have a different tree will grow up there. It's more suited for up there. So they will take over. Cedar trees will take over if it's suited for them.
So that's
cedar trees, blackjack oak, different species like that. Shorter trees. You'll notice they're shorter.
But you gave a great example, like a blackjack oak. And if those of you don't know what a blackjack oak is, it is a rough, scraggly, usually lichen-laden tree. And it looks like, help me here, Bart, what would you say?
Well, it'll have the big old fat leaves in the fall, and some of them will turn orange, and they're really pretty at times.
Well, they are, but the branches look like a witch's hands. Yeah. It's
gnarled looking, the tree is.
Yeah, exactly.
And the wood is extremely hard. If you want to dull your chainsaw, try to cut one down.
And I'm assuming that grows really slow. But now cedars, for example, cedars right beside them grow like weeds, like pines, I guess.
But then they slow down. Cedars slow down quickly too. If you notice, they don't get that tall. Cedar tree 40, 50 feet tall. That's pretty tall cedar.
Yeah, that's a lot of cedar. Yeah, that's a lot of cedar. Randy, I'm sorry, I'm hogging the mic, buddy. What's yours?
No, This is probably, if this isn't the time for it, then that's fine. I'll acquiesce. But I'm curious, your love and your interest in trees goes back how far?
Forever.
Yeah.
It's my forever. Yeah. I don't know this because I don't have a remembrance of it, but my parents said by the time I was 3, I would just leave the house and be gone for a few hours until they started calling me to come home. And I have no idea. I guess it's because of that, but I can park on a 200-acre tract of land that I've never been on and make a round out through it looking at it and walk out within 50 steps of my truck. I don't know how, but I can. I mean, that's just something I was raised. And my grandfather on my mother's side, he put out logs in the fall for different companies. And whenever I was growing up, I thought I might want to be a wildlife biologist. Well, because I like the outdoors, like to hunt and fish. But then I found out what those guys had to go through. And they didn't get paid much. So I decided to become a forester since it was a school close to where I lived. And I didn't realize what it took to become a forester. I probably never would have become one. I mean, I learned a lot that I didn't know. I went to school in a very small place. 18 of us graduating class. I was the only one in my class that even went to college.
I think it's time to transition to that story, isn't it, Randy?
Yeah, I do too. Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, keep going. Let's hear that part.
And what year? Give us some time frame here, Bart.
Well, I graduated high school in 1968, and when I went to college, I mean, I had used a chainsaw a lot, cutting pulpwood, shortwood pulpwood, and things like that. And really, what I wanted to do was just go to work. But I've all my life, I had told myself I was going to college, and it wasn't a question. I just was. So
why?
I picked the school. I don't know. My dad and mother didn't. They didn't discourage me at all, but they didn't.
Just something you wanted to do.
It wasn't this. You son, you need to go to college. It wasn't that at all. When I graduated high school, and my dad was the best man I've ever known, he stuck out his hand and shook my hand and said, "Good luck." I was 17. And,
it's been a struggle ever since, hasn't it?
But I went to college. I wound up, in forestry school, you start out with trigonometry and a year of chemistry and botany and zoology and physics, and then the courses get hard.
Yeah, I'm out already. I can tell you right now.
I actually made it through in 4 years. I wound up having hepatitis and being quarantined 6 weeks while I was there. But I made it through school kind of like the ant eating the elephant, one bite at a time. That's the way I went through.
And what town was this? What town?
Monticello.
No, but I mean, did you said you graduated high school?
Oh, I graduated high school at Kingsland, the birthplace of Johnny Cash and Paul Bear Bryant. As a matter
before he moved to the big city, before JR moved uptown.
Yeah, whenever the Cashes moved to Dias, Arkansas, my grandfather moved them.
Really?
Yes, he moved.
And by the way, just a tangential note, and I know you know this part, and Randy, I don't know if you do, but Dias, Arkansas.
I can tell you right now, I don't know what you're going to say, but I promise you I don't know it.
Well, Dias, Arkansas, most people don't see, and they've actually taken Johnny Cash's home place, not where he was born, but his home place, and they've made it, they've made it a museum. But Diaz was an experimental farm where you got 40 acres and a mule, and these were people who were destitutely poor. I had some of my family from Oklahoma that came in with the Diaz project, and it was part of the Roosevelt thing, wasn't it, Bart?
I think so. They were so poor that Johnny's dad, Mr. Ray Cash, told my grandfather whenever he left. And by the way, they had to hitch mules to his truck to get him going after he unloaded their furniture. But Mr. Cash told my grandfather, said, it was my mother's dad, Mr. Mitchell, said, I don't have any money to pay you, but as soon as we get a little ahead, I'll send you some money. I guess they just never did get ahead. Here's the deal. Now, they may never go ahead. Johnny did okay. But I used to see Johnny. When I was growing up, I mean, he would come to Kingsland and nobody bothered him, anything like that.
Well, and when he went to Memphis, everybody knew him as JR. When he went through the military, he was JR. Nobody knew who Johnny Cash was. It was JR. No. And I will go ahead and cut to the chase here. I don't want to chase this too far, but we talk about timber in Arkansas, and I mean, my dad's from Sheridan, which is Grant County, and the number one industry in Grant County is timber. It's timber. Oh man, I mean tons, and this is so in South Arkansas. There's a lot of timber. Well, you say how you tying this to JR and to Johnny Cash. Johnny Cash had an older brother who he believed was going to be a pastor, and he was the gem of his father's eye. I mean, his daddy just thought the world of his older brother. His older brother fell into a log saw, and it was a horrible, gruesome event. And it was one of those scenarios where it couldn't have been much worse. And then JR's dad, Johnny's dad, said, "Well, if you'd been running that saw, that's what it should have been, Yeah. I mean, it was tough back then, needless to say. That's pretty tough on a kid. Yes. Yeah, pretty tough. And they said that he had always struggled with that because, that was and he just idolized his brother, and that
Yes,
kind of
he
tore
did.
the whole family
Evidently.
up for a while. Anyway, I digress, but we're back to Kingsland, Arkansas, where you graduated.
Whenever they moved to Dias, the kids, Johnny and his brother and them, sat in the cab with my grandfather, and their parents sat in the back with the furniture.
Really?
Yeah.
But now, hang on, let's go here.
They had to
From
protect their
Kingsland-
really important stuff.
Yeah.
If you go to Kingsland, there's a guitar in concrete and a little fenced in area and signs and things saying birthplace of Johnny Cash.
Right.
Well, but let's go back to it. From Kingsland, Arkansas to Diaz is the opposite end of the state, right?
Yes, that's northeast Arkansas, up around close to Jonesboro somewhere.
Okay.
Diaz.
Was this a one-day trip, or was this a several-day trip?
I guess it was. I guess it was. I was either little bitty or not bitty, not even at the time. But
About 150 miles of hard gravel roads, what it sounds like to me.
Yes. And when they got there, it was mud. My grandfather said when he got back home, he said he really hated to leave that woman and those kids in that muddy mess. I mean,
what a fantastic story.
I'm not making this up.
Yeah.
I know. I'm just wow.
So you leave high school and you go to Monticello. Okay, for those of us that aren't familiar, how far away are we talking?
A short hour, about 50 minutes. The problem that I had when I got there, I didn't have a vehicle, but I borrowed our family truck to go. When I pulled up in the parking lot, I had a little map that showed me my dorm that I was going to stay in, and I sat there for over half an hour deciding if I was going to actually get out of that truck and go in that dorm or go back home and pick up a chainsaw or go to work at the plywood plant.
And why? And what were you thinking during that half hour?
I knew what I could do. I was raised out. I mean, Kingsland had a population of 180, and I didn't live in town. I mean, we got up. When I was growing up, a car would come by, we would stand up and look.
Of course.
Because then not many came by.
Yeah.
And you knew them, you knew who it was. We had the last telephone in our house for miles. So when someone passed away for the next 10 miles, they called us. And
ask you to drive down the road to see them or say something or what?
Spread the word.
Tell them their relative had passed away. My parents did that many times. But
so you're sitting in the truck for 30 minutes and you're agonizing over this. And what?
I sure am.
And what's the debate? The debate is to get educated or just go to work.
Yes, because I knew how to go to work.
And you like the chainsaw. So I mean, you said you like working. I mean, I remember before I went to college, I remember getting out of high school thinking, man, or in high school thinking, I cannot wait to get to work. This high school thing is wearing me out.
Well, 4 years seemed like a long time.
Yeah, I bet.
And you in the forestry school down there, you had to go 4 years plus one summer between your sophomore and junior. You had to graduate in forestry, you had the minimum was 142 hours and you had no matter. That was just your major.
Really?
Yeah, a lot of hours.
142 hours. And
So,
like I say, you had the sciences, you had all the sciences, and then you had the statistical analysis that he taught you without a book and things like that.
So you've got a major time commitment. Are you worried about money at the time to afford all this?
Yes.
So how are you going to pay for all this?
Well, I happened to be the valedictorian of my graduating class, so I scored good on the ACT, so I got an academic scholarship from the school, and the W.P. Sturgis Foundation, who does a lot of good things still. Mr. Sturgis's sister was my neighbor, from Kingsland, and I know with her help, but anyway, I wound up with a $500 a semester grant from the Sturgis Foundation. And back in 1968, that was a pile of money. And my parents would give me $200 or $300 a semester too, as long as I was in school.
All right. So what prompted you to get out of the truck?
The future. I had enough sense, thank the Lord, I had enough sense to know that, sooner or later, I was really going to be glad I got out of this truck. So I did.
Well, we're certainly glad you got out of the truck.
It was a debate. I promise you, it was a debate.
Yeah.
Really? And what a wonderful, wonderful story. But I'm here sitting to myself thinking, you're wrestling it back and forth. Honestly, I enjoy working. So it's today's pleasure versus 4 years of pain, but then I'll get something on the other side of that. Right.
But I worked all through college too, at whatever job I could find, from registering students to picking leaves out of a nursery, picking weeds out of a nursery to, whatever.
Now, once you get to school, first semester, what are you thinking?
Yes. No.
Shouldn't have got out of the truck.
Well, I was very fortunate. I went into let's see, what was it? One physics. It was one college algebra. Trigonometry. I went into the trigonometry class, and the teacher, there were 22 kids in the class, and 3 of us were foresters, and the other were pre-med majors. And yes, true. A lot of pre-med majors went to smaller schools to get their first couple of years. The instructor said, I hope all of y'all had high school trig, because I'm going to teach it like you did. Turn to chapter 2. That was the first words out of that man's mouth. And I had never heard of trig.
Where's that truck? Where's that truck in that chainsaw?
My roommate was a senior accounting major that had taken things like that as electives. The first 9 weeks, I made a C, barely. The second 9 weeks, he helped me. I understood it. I made a flat A.
Really?
But so he was brought into my life. So I saw that as a sign.
That's awesome.
And mainly and I saw these other guys. There were several guys that had been in forestry for 6 years, struggling, but they stayed with it. They weren't quitters. Why should I be?
Okay.
Now, what did you want to do? What do you think post-college is going to look like at that point?
Well, post-college, I thought I was going to ride around in a yellow truck, which that's what called the Georgia Pacific, which was a local timber company there.
Right.
They're foresters. I thought I'd ride around the truck and look at trees. But boy, was I wrong. Because as I got ready to graduate, there was this new field really opening up called procurement, which is timber buying in colloquial terms. And the head of the department, he told me, Langford, you need to get into this procurement field. And there's a job over in Mississippi. You need to go apply for it. And I did, and I got it. And I was the highest paid graduate ever by over $100 and something a month. At the time, of course, not now, but at the time, I was the highest paid graduate ever that the school had.
And now what do mom and dad think?
Well, they thought I was moving too far from home.
Yeah.
No,
this was going to go to your head and all that.
No, I didn't know what I was going to do with all that money. But I found out.
You figured it out, didn't you? You figured it. Well, tell me what procurement is.
Things like this. So,
what's procurement? Tell me how that worked.
Procurement is buying. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're buying trees, but it's competitive buying. You have all these other foresters this morning buy these tracts of land. Back then, before the companies had all this excessive wood like they have now, you would find 4 or 5 people trying to bid on every tract of trees that came up for sale, and you had to beat them, but you had to make money. If you didn't make money, you wouldn't be buying long. Somebody else would. And I was so nervous, and I still had that small town mentality. The shy. I mean, I'm one of the most shy people you've ever heard. I know it doesn't sound like it now, but I would actually throw up going to see people and knock on people's doors that I hadn't met. But that was my job, so I did it anyway. And then I met so many wonderful, good people doing this. So it's a lot of great people in the world, and I met my share of them because of the tract that my life did take.
Now, Bart, I've not said this to anybody else. We've interviewed a lot of people in the last 280 whatever days, Randy.
Mm-hmm.
And I've not said this yet. I've thought it, but I've not said this yet. But my friend, you have a book to write. And I'm not exaggerating. I don't think we've even scratched the surface. We hadn't got to the good years yet. So, Randy, how do we go from here? You ask the next employment question.
I don't know. I want to know. So describe the family. to me, Bart. So your
My family,
your current family. Give me
yes,
some sense.
my wife and I live in the village. She's from Texarkana. We met at the church at Rock Creek over in Little Rock about 12 years ago. And we've been married almost 9 years now, and be 10 next year. So we're enjoy the same things. We have a kind of a blended family. We never get them all together, but as a matter of fact, yesterday my oldest little granddaughter had a baby boy. So I have a great grandson called Miles, and everybody's doing great. Everything's good. So we were living south of Little Rock in Saline County, and I have a son-in-law that's a physical therapist in the village, and a daughter that works in the village did as a physical therapist. And they told us that we need y'all, Dad, y'all need to be in the village. You need to be in the village. So they brought us over here and carried us around, and we liked what little we saw.
When was that? What year was that?
Oh, gosh, that's been 6-7 years ago.
Okay.
Because this is our 4th year here, and we looked for 2 years before we came. We would come to carport sales and estate sales and spend most of the day going looking at houses. And it was more to see where we wanted than a particular house. It wasn't that. And then we had one to sell, so we put it on the market, and when it sold, we came. And haven't regretted it at all. She still worked for Baptist at the time, and she drove back and forth for a year, but now.
So the blended family looks like, so you've got how many adult kids are we talking?
Children.
Okay.
6 children, three each. They're scattered out from Houston, Texas to Dallas, Texas, to one actually lives in the village.
And how many grandkids?
Oh gosh, about a dozen.
Yeah. And now one great grandchild.
No, we have 2 greats.
Okay.
We have another one, yes.
Oh, so Miles has got a competitor.
Her youngest son has a daughter. They live just this side of Dallas. She's going out there another week or 2 for spend a week with them.
Listen, I ask all this. I ask all this because before we hit record, you were sharing with us some of your medical challenges, and I had shared that, my dad is 98 and whatnot. And I'm in no way implying we're all circling the drain. It's not right. So these are great forums. Dennis and I have been challenged, and we challenged ourselves early on to start talking to some of these older heads. The village is 50 plus years old now, and to talk to some of these people, and there's an awful lot of people that can't talk to. They're not here anymore. So when I ask about your family, your story is so compelling, and you're such a terrific kind of a personality. Yeah, for their sake and for villagers' sake, we may need to do a deeper dive into Mr. Bart at some point.
My mother was a genealogist.
Really?
So she helped write and co-write several books, and we even assisted with a movie production here just west of here that Billy Bob Thornton had. She assisted in that movie, not in the movie per se, but in the gathering of information and the history and all of the movie. But she was a genealogist, and it kind of so it stuck with me. Some of the things like that, things you would think of that not everyone would think of, because she did it. She did it for so long, working for people and helping them out with their genealogical research.
Well, true story. I started, not that the audience cares, but I'm going to share it anyway. I started podcasting over 20 years ago, and that was exactly why. I was thinking about great-grandfathers.
Yes.
And I thought, if they would have had the technology, how cool would it be to click play and listen to my great-grandfathers?
Yes,
okay,
sir.
But they didn't have the technology, and I'm sitting here thinking, I got the technology. I was in my 40s. I'm 60. I'll be 65 this year. And I was in my early 40s. My kids were in high school, and I thought, man, I need to just start recording some stuff. And I've sat down with my dad to record some stuff. So
that's really good.
You're nowhere near that age, but somebody with the kind of stories that you've got, I'm glad
my daughter gave me. Have you ever heard of Storyworth?
I have.
Yeah.
My daughter gave me a Storyworth a year ago, and I filled it out every week, just like I was supposed to. So
Good.
we're supposed to have a book coming out like that. You're given a question, and then you give your views and why you did this in your life and all that.
Well,
I haven't
good.
seen the book, and it was just 1 week at a time.
Right.
But I have no idea what it's going to look like. It was her daughter that had the baby. She's my oldest. My oldest. You know what's worse than turning 50, don't you? Having your oldest child turn 50.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought you were going to say not turning 50.
Well, I'm headed there. My oldest will turn 42 this year, so I'm quickly getting there. I didn't mean to hijack. Well, I did mean to hijack the conversation because I just did it, and I'm not going to apologize for it. So, Dennis,
well, if people in the village, we have the problem we have here in the village is a multitude of ownerships. So these little bitty small tracts, they are not conducive to loggers. It costs just as much to move on 1 acre as it does 100 acres, or to move off. And so you're limited that way. And a lot of people just simply don't like to see trees cut, mainly because they don't realize the need. For instance, fire, a control burn between our roads would help the looks. You were talking about the looks a while ago, Dennis, and it would help the looks immensely because a fire would clean off the duff, not necessarily underbrush, but the leaves and the twigs, and a beautiful little stand of grasses would come up, and it would look so pretty. But the smoke is a bad thing in the village. We have too many people with breathing problems. And besides that, I may want mine burned, but you might not want the fire on yours. And we're side by side. So it becomes kind of economically impossible, you might say.
Let's address that real quick, because one of the places, and Bart, I know you too. You and I and Jeff are some of the people that I know have been deep all over this village in hundreds of locations. There are places in the village where the leaf litter, and I'm not exaggerating, is knee high.
Yes, and it's very dangerous.
It is very dangerous, and it will burn for days and weeks and months. Yep. I mean, if we did have a fire there, if we did even an intentional fire, that stuff it would smolder for weeks. Am I wrong?
It would. And we have the road system, but I don't know how it can be accomplished, but I really wish it could be. Even in limited amounts, if you have a strip of high litter like you're talking about, and you can burn that, then you're creating a buffer between 2 other strips of high litter that if one of them catches fire, it won't continue on. You follow me?
Yeah.
Then even if we couldn't burn everywhere, if we could burn some places, it would aid the health of our forest, even the looks of the forest, even though it would look kind of bad for, we're not growing tomatoes. We're not a 3-month crop. We're a 90-year crop. So when you bush hog the field and till up the ground, it doesn't look that pretty either.
Yeah.
But it eventually does when you eat the tomatoes.
Well, let's go into, okay, so you're on the forestry committee and the common property committee. Just give us a high overview. And by the way, Randy, I think you've made this. We need to wrap up here in just a minute, but I want to do a lightning round, and then I want to come back and just do a Bart show. Can we do that? Just do a life story kind of thing?
We want to mention one thing about the committee is we are looking at the forest in the village. We're taking all these things into consideration, including people's feelings. But we have some sick forests. If you'll look up as you drive around, you see brown tops. Those are dead trees. If you look down, you'll see trees lying on the forest floor. Those are dead trees. There's no need in letting trees die if we can salvage some of them and make our forest healthier around us. That's all when we do things or make decisions, we're doing it for the health of the forest, for the health of Hot Springs Village, for the health of everybody here. You're going to get more oxygen in the air. You're going to feel better. It's just a good thing. We're
so
not
Bart,
all the trees.
So Bart, I'm a lot owner, thanks to Dennis Simpson and a decent sized check. Don't have plans to build immediately, but a lot of trees. And you know what a builder's going to do? They're going to come in. Okay, well, the house needs to go here, so we need to take these trees out. Right. It doesn't have anything to do with the health of the trees or anything else. I understand the practicality of that, but we get all kinds of people who want to talk. They want us to have home builders on and talk about that. But let's start before we even get to that. So of all the trees that are on my lot, where do you even begin? Because a builder could come in and take out maybe the very trees that you would want to keep. And I get that there's cost of construction and all that, but just from a tree perspective,
Yes.
what's the best course of action?
You look for, if you have enough trees to actually sell them, which takes quite a few, at least a load or two for the little small logger that I've found in the village. But if you don't, at least identify the trees, maybe the 10s and 12s and 14 inches in diameter, preferably hardwood trees that you have on your lot around the edges, because the house is more than likely going into the middle or thereabouts, and you don't know what kind of configuration you're going to have driveway. If you can, the best case scenario would figure out your house before you cut your trees. That's the ideal. Where your driveway is coming, because where the house is, where the driveway is coming, where the yard and your septic and blah blah blah, the trees aren't going to exist. They're going to be hauled off, burned up, something. So better to.
But then you don't want to be left with the trees that you've got being the least healthy trees that you had on your lot.
No, and that's where I was going to look at your trees, and it's hard for people to understand this, but plan your house a little bit around your trees. But if you look, most lots will have some good trees, what I call good trees, healthy trees. And they can be even 8 inches, 10 inches, as long as they're healthy looking, have a nice crown. That's one of the main aspects of a healthy tree is the crown and how it looks and how healthy it looks, how many leaves it has, things like that.
And Bart, just to throw something out, and this is very elementary, but it's where I live. When you see that a road has been plowed or there's been something opened up, the trees that are inside the lot are obviously mature and going okay. And the ones that have newfound, like in the ditches, man, they're racing off because they've just found some daylight, right? I mean, that's what's going on, right?
And they're young.
And so my point is, to your point, envision, Randy, that you know where your house is going to be. Okay, well, the trees around that are going to get a spurt of daylight.
The whole ditch in front of our lot is filled with pine trees, yay tall. Yeah, it's like one of the first things my wife said is, well, we need to do something with those, not get rid of them. Like they need to be somewhere where they can thrive. So
you can trim them, but if they're too thick. Keep that in mind, and you can sure some of them are going to die.
Yeah.
You can either cut a few of them and have some really nice ones, or you can let them sit there and shrivel up.
So, and let me, because everything has an inner balance, everything has a cost and a relativity here. Certainly. From what I'm hearing you say and what we've talked about. But for example, and hypothetically, and I know we can't do it, but if we were to Cambrai and the area northwest of Cortez out to the village edge, Cambrai, Mampacillo, the southern couple other subdivisions there. If we were to burn that off, hypothetically, and we can't, but if we did, we're going to get a lot of green grasses in there. Yes. And the very first thing that somebody's not going to realize is we're going to have a huge stand of deer.
Yes.
Because they're going to love those grasses.
And butterflies and turkeys and grasshoppers, because turkeys love to eat little insects. It's not just the deer. The deer may not eat the insects, but they eat the things that, the turkeys will eat the things that come to the grass, like the small insects. Turkeys love burns. A lot of people love to see turkeys. We don't even hunt them in the village.
Yeah.
They very seldom run over anybody.
Oh, my Lord. And not only that, the turkeys, oh my God. I go through the national forest. I come within 500 yards of a turkey. The whole herd's gone. Yeah. I come over to the Lake Lago and drive around.
Yes.
The drake just looks at me like, what are you doing? What are you looking at? What are you looking at? And all the hens are like, why is he here? Can't he go on? I mean, they are fearless.
They're tame.
Oh yeah, you're right. They really are. They're tame. I hear tell they're tasty too, but I hadn't tried that yet.
I don't know about them. I enjoy a good turkey, but I'm not ran over any in the village.
They're not jumping in front of your car, right?
No, not yet. They have
Okay.
before, and other people's, but not mine.
Bart and Randy, I think you'll concur. We have proven in this rambling conversation that we have to come back and pursue the life of Bart. Is that fair, Randy?
Yeah. Oh, there's no question.
I
There's
don't
no
know if it's worth pursuing. Y'all left me.
No, it's worth pursuing. It's,
Okay, here we are.
We're going to have a lightning round, but right now
Right.
we're leaving you in the piney woods of Mississippi as a procurement guy, but we're coming back to get you.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll come back. We'll come back and finish the story. Okay, so this is really quick and easy, Bart. This is we call it our lightning round.
Lightning round.
Hiking, hunting, or fishing?
Fishing.
Hamburgers, tacos, or pizza?
Hamburger.
Favorite day of the week?
All of them. Sunday.
Favorite city in the U.S. besides the one that you live in?
Oh my goodness. Favorite city in the U.S. Golly. I don't really have one. You asked me a favorite part of the country, and I'm okay.
Okay,
I'd much rather be out in the
okay.
woods than I had in a city.
Favorite part of the country then?
On a riverbank.
Any particular river?
Saline. I grew up next to the Saline River. That's where I went on Mother's Day after my mother passed away. I went to the Saline River and sat in a chair on the bank and fished. I didn't keep any fish. I just fished.
What's the longest time that you spent in the woods? And I don't mean camping. I mean just going to look around and ponder and contemplate.
Yes, 10 hours.
Man after my own heart. Favorite band or musician?
Oh, there's so many. But my favorite are the older country, like Johnny Cash, like Elvis. I really enjoy Elvis, Johnny Cash, Waylon Jennings, like that. Chris Christopherson.
I'm right there with you.
I have to say Johnny because he's from Kingsland. We both are.
Yeah. There you go. Favorite holiday?
Christmas.
First job?
Oh, first job was trimming trees with an axe that someone had cut down with a chainsaw, and I trimmed the limbs off of them so they could sell them.
Do you play a musical instrument?
Yes, a guitar.
How long have you played?
Since I was about 6.
Okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being I'm Chet Atkins and 1 being I'm terrible, where are you?
Oh, 5.
It's not bad. Not bad. Not when Chet's a 10. That ain't bad.
Yeah.
When we have a family reunion, which we until COVID we had every year since 1974, until COVID. I was the entertainment. My family liked to sing. I had a couple of aunts and uncles that used to sing on the radio, and but I'm the only one that plays the guitar. My grandmother taught me to play the guitar. And
Do you sing too?
We will play 2 to 3 hours until my fingers bleed. Yes, I sing too. Not very well, but I sing.
Country and gospel kind of stuff, I would suspect.
Country and old time gospel.
I knew it. First concert that you ever went to?
Yeah. Johnny Paycheck.
Take the job and show.
Yeah. There you go. Favorite sports
I went
team?
to several.
Yeah.
One of the best one was Jerry Reed, believe it or not. The best
I believe it.
Favorite sports team would probably you talking about professional or
Doesn't matter.
Arkansas Razorback basketball.
Oh, well, you're fixing to get into your element then with March Madness.
Yes, I played basketball a long time ago.
Well, excellent. In college or high school?
I had a college offer and 2 walk-on offers in college, but I knew that it was time for me to quit playing and start studying.
Yeah, I started to say, man, with that trig class, you didn't have time for ball.
I really did.
Then the courses got hard.
Yeah,
Then the courses got
exactly.
hard.
How many hours do you sleep at night?
Oh, 5 or 6.
Yeah, there you go. Another man after my heart. What's your favorite article of clothing?
Oh, a pair of shorts.
You got a favorite quote?
just that, and not a real quote, just to be happy with where I am in life and what I have, and not be worried about things.
Thanks for doing this. I appreciate it.
Oh,
It's
you're
been
welcome.
great. It's been great
I
getting
had
to
no
know
idea
you.
it would last quite this long. I didn't know I had that much to say.
Well, hey, Dennis vows that he and his wife are going to revoke my introvert card, because I'm like you. Now, I'm not as bad. I wouldn't throw up before knocking on a door. I'm not that bad, but
Well, at times I did more than throw up. I got sick the other way too.
yeah. Well, I'm not that bad, but I can appreciate it. I'm an introvert.
I
as
always
well.
went and knocked on that door though. I mean, from April to September, I didn't wear shoes when I was growing up, except for go to church on Sunday.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I lived out in the country. We were country people.
Yeah.
That's no joke.
I love
And
it.
I'm proud of that. I'm proud of that. I'm
You
not
should
ashamed of
be.
it.
You should be.
They live so far
I'm
back
proud
in
of it for you.
They live so far back in the country they didn't get Saturday Night Live till Monday morning.
Monday morning. That's right.
Didn't
remember
always
when we
get it
didn't-
then.
I remember when we didn't have a television.
Right.
Oh, my
Well,
Lord.
Dennis, you got the sun beaming right in your face there. So
You know, if we make the interviews go long enough, this always happens. You
Yeah.
know? And anyway,
I'm gonna let you say goodnight, Dennis. And yeah, we definitely need at least part 2. We may need more than part 2.
yeah, we may need part 2. Well, for Hot Springs Village Inside Out, I'm Dennis Simpson. He's Barton Langford, who has been a delight. You know what? I knew when I first met you, Barton, we talked, I thought this guy needs to be on screen. We need to get him in front and share his story with other people, but I didn't even know it'd be this good. So till next time, Hot Springs
Hope it
Village
wasn't
Inside
bad
Out.
anyway.
No, it's been great. Talk to y'all next time.
Goodbye.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Hot Springs Village Inside Out, a podcast where Hot Springs Village, Arkansas is the star. Please subscribe to the podcast. You can do that by visiting our website, hsvinsideout.com, and tell a friend.